Hey guys. So today's going to be a bit of a different video because I have been seeing videos online and I wanted to give a commentary on it, only because I feel like the topic hasn't necessarily been talked about with the nuance that I feel it deserves. And I feel that luckily this is one of the situations where I can kind of talk about this. And it's the male loneliness epidemic. I know that some of you might roll your eyes just at hearing me say that. And I guess to a certain extent, it's understood depending on what you've heard about the male loneliness epidemic. I don't know if I'd necessarily use that term, but I do think there are things that need to be talked about and need to be understood, especially how, one, again, how fictions kind of represent them and represent men, and both how men can learn from themselves and men who came before them in order to help themselves. Because again, like, there's a lot of crap happening that I think is really detrimental and not helping the discourse at all. For anybody who doesn't know, the reason I feel like even remotely able to talk about this stuff is because I did get my master's in psychology. For people who have been longtime watchers of the channel, I have talked about male and masculine issues before. I am not exclusively talking about it, but I do think it's very important because a lot of times it relates directly to the stories that we talk about. And I think that just because I'm a dude and I think have an inside perspective on how a bunch of these topics I think actually manifest in real life, and because I have an education in it, I can actually, I think, speak pretty confidently about this, and especially about this particular thing because my specific area of psychology that I went into was marriage and family therapy. And so while I have like a wide breadth of sociological and psychological background as far as like my education, the thing that I was like kind of like trained in was more or less kind of like relationships. Now, again, that's not the only thing that I've done. I work with all different sorts of clients, but it's, I think, this area of male loneliness that I think I do kind of have an expertise in, only because so much of the time it is romance and women that are looked at, I think wrongfully, as the cure for this loneliness that a lot of dudes are thinking, or I should say that a lot of dudes are feeling. And I wanted to go over some videos with you guys, and I was sorry for like the long lead-in and intro, but there was a video that I saw recently and I saved it, and there's another one. And again, I think these types of videos do more harm than good ultimately in the long run, because I don't think, one, it addresses any of the real issues that are happening with men in this country, or even just around the world, because I think 100% men are suffering in ways that I think are unique from like the way that women suffer, at least in like a modern social setting. I think social media, again, from like kind of like my psych perspective, is doing a horrible number on the broad psyche of people, just like in general, men and women included, but I think men are being affected in a different way. So here's a bit of the video that I wanted to show you guys.
Mention that we don't have a loneliness epidemic, we have a loser epidemic. Absolutely. Y'all who are waking up, these men who are waking up in the morning with their mouth taped shut, should keep that there. Start there.
Okay, so the first thing that I do want to address, and I'm not going to make this like an entire reaction video because we're gonna watch like a little bit of it, because like I think it is like a few minutes long, and I don't want this to be an hour-long video. But I think this is funny from like a sociological perspective. There's been like an evolution online of the type of content that men are really invested in. And again, I'm not going to get into the long drawn out history of how we got to this spot, in particular with fitness content, but I think it is very telling that she references fitness content. Yeah, like right here. So let's talk about this for a little bit. First, obviously, the elephant in the room. She openly denies that there is a male loneliness epidemic in the first place. I do not agree, in the sense that I don't think there's a problem, because the thing that she says is that there isn't a loneliness epidemic, that there's a loser epidemic. And I think this is both detrimental to men and women, because I think it passes off the idea of the things that men are experiencing as personal shortcomings. And you're going to see why that is, I think, especially dangerous, like going forward. Again, I've seen this creator and I've understand like what she's talking about from a feminine perspective, because I'm sure it sucks to have dealt with the things that she has dealt with from men, but this isn't helping at all. In fact, I think it's largely contributing to an issue that is causing the exact problems that she is facing. But aside from the fact that she basically just calls lonely men losers and denies the existence of a problem, she brings up the idea of a bunch of these creators. Well, I guess two of them are Ashton Hall, who I've actually been following for like years, even before he blew up. And the other one is, I don't really know what this is, but the reason fitness creators have become so big is actually specifically because of the male loneliness epidemic. I am not going to necessarily show it here, but there is like a huge, massive swell of young men who are like getting into steroids and steroid use at the gym. And it's really dangerous. Like there's no healthy way to use steroids. And this is coming from someone who at one point was like an open exercise addict. I started exercising and going to the gym when I was 15, and I have been consistently going pretty much nearly every week of my life for the last 14 years. And I've had to develop a healthy relationship with going to the gym and exercising and make sure that things in my life get done before exercising. But the reason that this kind of stuff has happened here with the modern day kind of like, I think, masculine obsession with being fit and going to the gym is, I think it's a bit of a perversion of the idea of self-love and body love, right? Because for a lot of dudes, they feel that the thing that they can control is their bodies, right? It's a multifaceted thing, but these guys, to a lot of young men, kind of are like icons. Because what happens is that when young men feel isolated from society, and we're talking about like romantically and platonically, right? When young men feel that they don't have friends, if they don't have romantic partners, what they do is they seek out people who seem successful and who seem like they have their lives together, and who seem like they're in control of their lives and their situations. And a lot of young men are taught from a very young age that part of being masculine is having muscles and being strong. But it goes even deeper than that, because I think a lot of young men will look at the gym as the space where I don't need outside validation. I don't need anybody else, right? Like, I don't need that interpersonal connection. The gym is my relationship, right? Like, and I am my biggest ally and my biggest adversary, right? Like, I'm the only thing stopping me from looking like these people. I'm not going to get into the whole horrific gym culture around like steroids and the fact that so many people, I think, are manipulating how they look online in order to be able to sell a product or like a coaching like scheme or whatever it may be. But the thing to understand here is that the exact types of people that she shows are, I think, both symptoms and causes for a lot of men not looking to grow emotionally, but they look to grow physically. Because they think, if I, one, have control over this area of my life, that'll make me feel good. And as someone who likes to go to the gym, I'm gonna be real, it does feel really good to see yourself progress. It's like literally leveling up in real life, right? Like, you know, you see your muscles get bigger. You see, you know, maybe your confidence grows a little bit because now you have more body positivity, right? And a lot of the times, I think, again, maybe in an unhealthy way, men will look to these markers as growth that doesn't need to be, I think, paired with, again, any type of like emotional intelligence, right? Any type of emotional growth, any type of spiritual growth, right? Any type of social growth. If you hear about gym bros and people who are only obsessed with being gym bros, a lot of it does come from your identity as a dude being tied up in your body. And I think that is an aspect of modern day gym culture, in the modern day male loneliness epidemic, if we are going to call it that that is not talked about often. But I did want to point that out because, again, it's one of the first things that she brings up, and it's the fact that these guys are role models for a lot of dudes, but they're not role models, I think, in any significant, meaningful way. In fact, I think it starts these guys down a pipeline of looking to their bodies as the fix-all, when ultimately that's not going to change at all. But let's listen to more the actual video we came here for.
Shut should keep that there. Start there. Male loneliness epidemic is funny because at no fucking time do the cat ladies ever get worried that they're going to die alone. They're not going to die alone. They're not even going to die alone just with their cats. I know for a fact that if I ever was in a hospice situation, something horrible happened to me, I couldn't advocate for myself, right? Like a lot of people end up in those situations and all they want and need is someone to be there. I got people for miles that would pull up. I have family members. I have my sister. I have friends. I have a network of relationships. Never have I ever considered in my mind thinking, oh, you know, if I do end up not marrying someone or not spending my life with someone, has it ever even crossed my mind that I'm going to be lonely? Never once. The difference isn't that, oh, women think about this and they establish relationships. It's that we care about the relationships in our life that aren't romantic. Think about that. We don't treat our friendships, our families, our nieces, nephews, anyone, even like coworkers to a certain extent, when you get close with them, like they're just there as placeholders until you find a marriage.
Okay. So this is, I think, both insightful because it gets towards, I think, a real issue that is happening with young men, but I think so profoundly blind to the issues that she even is pointing out that it almost like swings back to parody, because this is a woman talking about how in her experience as a woman, she has never once considered that she would be lonely even in her most dire situations. And she says the reason she is in that position is because she treats non-romantic relationships with the same importance as romantic relationships. And the problem with men, or at least lonely men, is that they incentivize romantic relationships, or at least looking for romantic relationships, over anything else, and makes everything else, or these men make everything else kind of like a placeholder relationship. The reason I say this kind of like circles back around almost to being parody is that it's very funny for a woman to talk about the ease in which she is able to find community, while also saying that like she has deduced the exact problem wrong with why men are so lonely. And I think it comes down to the fact that she literally just has no idea the difficulties, I think very subconsciously and subtly, that men face from a young age societally and how we form friendships, right? Or just relationships in general. It's not about romance. It's not just about romance. I'll get to this a bit later, but romance is a huge problem with young men, because young men think romance is going to fix their loneliness. It's not. But I think the bigger issue here is that dudes all over the world, and this has been an issue that has stemmed back like generations and generations, but especially now, men just aren't really taught how to open up and connect with each other in large swaths. Like, sure, I was when I was younger, and a bunch of my friends were, but I was lucky to have, I think, like a really secure father figure who was like, yeah, it's fine to cry. It's fine to be able to talk about your feelings. It's fine to have women as friends. I was never taught to look at women as sex objects. I was just taught to look at them as people who also might happen to be sexy down the line. But like, a lot of men aren't. And that's just like the sad truth. This I don't think has really anything to do with the pursuit of romance being the problem. The pursuit of romance and seeing women as sex objects and romance objects is like a symptom of the bigger problem of men are often taught, don't show vulnerability or weakness because that can be taken advantage of, right? You can't stop your goals. You have to be a provider. You have to be a worker. You have to be a leader. And doing all those things requires you to have an emotional perseverance that does not allow you to succumb to the rigors of what kind of like a mental or emotional breakdown would entail, right? So just bury it. Bury it inside of you. Don't talk about it, because talking about it makes it a problem, right? Now, again, there's different like variations to this, but for the most part, women and young girls, to an extent, aren't really told that. Young girls are socialized, and I'm not just talking about being told, I'm talking about like what they see. Young girls, at least in the Western world, often are socialized to think, yeah, okay, we can talk to each other about our feelings. We can talk to each other about, you know, our emotions, about who we like at school, about our opinions about this thing. A lot of women are really, really good at being emotionally investigative, even if they like aren't trained in it or have like an education in it, right? I think, sure, maybe some of the nuances about how they communicate with each other, just like any person, they still can learn and introspect. But for the most part, women, I don't think, are as largely confused or ignorant of their emotions as a lot of men are. And I think it's because women get a lot more practice with it because they're told from a young age and they're modeled from a young age to get a lot more practice at it. But it's about, I think, the emotional vulnerability to, I think, introspect and be genuine. Like, why did I feel this way? You know, like, why did this thing make me feel this way? Am I having the emotional, like, honesty to continue to feel this way? And again, I'm not saying that women don't naturally suppress things. Like, everybody in every society, I think, deals with traumatic events. But I think the underlying element here is that for some women, I think they're judging men by the curve that women have created. And again, this isn't like, I think, a fault with women or femininity, but I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the problem actually is. Because of course, if I thought all a dude had to do was like talk to other people and be more friendly and not look at everything as romance, of course I'd be pissed and angry if I was a woman. But that's not the reality of how most dudes interact with each other. A lot of guys legit just don't know how to talk about their emotions. They have no idea what their emotions are. They have no idea what they even want. They have no idea what will make them happy. They've been told what will make them happy. They've been said, yeah, you know, make money, get a good job, get a wife, have kids, you know, get ripped, play sports, you know, that kind of stuff. And we're told certain things, what to like, what to find attractive, what shows to watch, what drinks to order, what, like, you know, clothes to wear. And if you notice how, I think, again, just socially, guys will very quickly, at least when they're young, shame each other for stepping kind of outside social norms. It's because so many dudes don't have an individualistic sense of who they are. A lot of the times, just as a kind of like male collective, we just kind of agree on the stuff that we're supposed to be interested in and the stuff that we're not supposed to be interested in and the stuff that we're not supposed to talk about. And we're just never able to develop those skills. And I guess as like a last little note about this, there's a thing called neuroplasticity in psychology that, well, it's neurology. And it talks about the ability for the brain to change. And the older you get, the less plastic your brain gets, which means the less ability it has to adapt and change to new situations, right? You can always eventually change. But young kids learn very, very quickly, can change very quickly. They're very plastic, you know, like they can be molded very easily. Adults cannot, at least not as easily. And the problem again is young boys, what they see and what they're told, either through fiction, TV, through their parents, through their environment, whatever it is, largely don't develop the language or the emotional introspection and intelligence to be able to talk about their feelings and make genuine connections. This is why a lot of the times women will find themselves having fallouts with other women, because I think women as a whole generally are more introspective and are told to talk about their feelings a lot more and have deeper relationships, and the deepness of the relationship can cause them to realize that they're incompatible. Whereas dudes will have a lot like less frequent fallouts because our relationships are very surface level, right? And the more surface level a relationship is, the easier it is for it to be maintained because we never actually come to a head or a conflict about any deeply held beliefs or ideas, right? It's I think the dichotomy between men and women, and we kind of don't understand each other And again, there's so much more I could talk about, but this creator, I think, is fundamentally misunderstanding it, and if anything, I think disproving her own point about men, because it goes so much deeper than just romance. Men don't even know how to be like vulnerable or have friends with other men, let alone women.
Male loneliness epidemic will be solved if y'all just make friends and keep them.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's simple, it's easy, just make friends. Which is as asinine advice as you could possibly give if you're literally talking about a group of people that struggles to make friends in relationships. That to me is literally like, oh yeah, if you want to be rich, just make more money, right? Like, or, you know, freaking if you're an alcoholic, you want to get over alcoholism, just stop drinking alcohol, right? It's sure easy in practice, but like, you know, does it actually do anything?
Or have friends that aren't just shallow and superficial.
Again, like, this is the advice.
And you can't even call on the phone when you're having a bad day. Wouldn't even pull up to your hospital room for a week after you got there. And when they did, they'd act annoyed about it and awkward, and they wouldn't know what to say to you. Come on now.
This, again, like, and I know she probably isn't really looking to have any, like, deep introspection or make any, like, serious prescriptions about, you know, like, what men should really be doing. But I almost feel like, why make the video if you're going to complain about something and then I think alienate the very group of people that you say are, like, causing big issues and problems, right? Because this type of video, I think if a dude saw this and they didn't have emotional intelligence, which again, like a lot of them don't, they'd be angry because they'd see someone mocking them. And unfortunately, it's a lot of time women that take the brunt of angry, insecure men. Women who will then go and like probably make more videos like this because they're hurt. And I think rightfully hurt. But calling, I think, lonely men losers and trash, I think only serves to worsen the situation that she is talking about. It's, I think, one, a profoundly unsympathetic way of looking at the problem. Because even if you don't believe the male loneliness epidemic is real, and even if you have hurt, or even if you have been hurt by men, which a ton of these people have been hurt by men, don't get me wrong, like there are tons of women who are completely justified in going onto social media and trashing men for their behavior, which we will literally see in just a second. But that is completely different, I think, than not offering up anything constructive if you have like a huge platform and can be viewed by a bunch of men and then you just make the problem worse. Right? Like, I don't know. This just seemed really low effort, and it seemed like something that a lot of people wouldn't even understand is wrong up until it was explained. Because again, she is correct in that a lot of the times men look at women and romance as markers of success. I am told that I'm supposed to get a hot girlfriend. I am told that I'm supposed to be muscular, right? I am told I'm supposed to have a good job and like be a high earner. The thing usually at the top of this list, and this is an evolutionary psychology perspective, is the romance, because we look to reproduce, we look to have a family, we look to make more of us. Like that's just what humans do. That's what all living things basically do. And a lot of men think that romance will fix the issues because everything else will kind of fall into place. And because of that, a lot of women are looked at as kind of like supposed to be the fix-alls. And when women can't fix it all because they're not freaking genies, they're just people, men take it out on them. But what we cannot do, or I should say at least we should not look to do, is simplify issues down to make it kind of like a personal failing on the part of individual men, right? Like, oh, it's not that you live in a society which for the most part doesn't really teach you how to be emotionally mature and introspective and know the fundamentals of creating deep, lasting relationships. It's just that you suck personally and you're a failure, which again, like could not be anywhere further from the truth if we are looking at like a widespread perspective. I'm certain some dudes are just douchebags and probably don't deserve any type of relationships if they continue their behavior. But I don't think this is like something that can be said largely for like, you know, huge parts of the population. And so there's another video that I want to show you guys. All right, here we go. Here's another one.
the narrative right now. We are not in a male loneliness epidemic. We are in a male pervert epidemic. I am 1 week out from graduating college and I've never had a boyfriend. I have never done anything, if you catch my drift. And it is solely because, I mean, like, what am I working with right now? Now, I don't claim to be all that in a bag of chips, okay? I don't need anyone calling me fugly. I think I'm pretty fine, whatever. Like, I'm average. That's fine, whatever. But 90% of the interactions I've had with men at college have been somebody coming up to me on a dance floor and borderline humping me, no words first. Oh, can I get your number now? And like, even on dating apps too. I mean, my Barstool account for my university, I'm sure other universities have this too, have Tinder Tuesday, where each week they do this. They post what men have sent to women. And it's always absolutely berserk. And men want to complain about being by themselves. And it's because all these fuck-ass losers being like, oh, boys are just easier to raise than girls. You did not socialize that fucking Neanderthal. Oh.
Okay. This is probably the most important point because, again, things are really nuanced in this situation. And it is not enough to just, I think, like, take like one side or the other, bash one side or the other. But what she said there, I think, is very telling. Like, you didn't socialize him. And this is, I think, again, a huge part. Now, unfortunately, again, she starts up by saying there's not a male loneliness epidemic, there's a male perv epidemic. And I think both can be true. I personally think it probably is true. Seeing the things that I see online and seeing the things that I've heard about working with clients, you know, in sessions and therapy, I think the internet has made a large portion of humanity, like of everyone, disgusting and gross and foul. But it's sad that my side is kind of like leading the flag on that one. Like, it's a lot of dudes are really, really terrible, and a lot of women only get exposed to the most horrible, terrible dudes. And yeah, if you're being a perv to women in public, please stop. Get help. Like, literally, find a therapist and get help. Because, like, it's just like the worst thing ever, because you make it so much harder for the rest of us, dude. Like, it is so difficult for any dude, even well-meaning dudes, I think, to rise above the reputation that a lot of like the horrible, nasty douchebags give us. And I want you to not be on our side anymore. I want you to take a breather. I want you to touch some grass, and I want you to get help. Because if you hate women, you're not helping yourself out either, or me. But I think the bigger thing here is, for this particular like video, the thing that she is talking about here is what I was addressing in, it's how men seek romance and the way that they truly don't know how to do it, right? Whatsoever. Because I think at its core, my hot take as a marriage and family therapist, at its core, I think romance is predicated upon emotional intelligence. You have to be emotionally mature if you're going to have even a successful short-term romance. You cannot do it. And what's happening with a lot of these guys is that they literally just have no idea how to be emotionally vulnerable with women in any real way. But they definitely still want romance. And if you want romance, but you don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable, you're going to have to seek out romance in an invulnerable way. Which means an ingenuine way, which means you're not going to open up. You're not going to be your true self, because that means if you get rejection, oh, you're not rejecting me. You're rejecting kind of this like persona that I'm putting on. And then the next step is to devalue women, right? It's, hey, if I don't think very highly of you and I don't treat you well and you reject me, well, then you're only rejecting me because I wasn't really putting in much effort, right? Again, there's a lot of nuance to this, but I think the core of it comes down to, because I don't know how to do this thing, which is romance, but because I also have been told to do this thing and want to do this thing, I'm just going to do it as ingenuinely and safely as possible, because the thing that I fear most is the personal actual rejection. And this is the sign of an immature dude. There's nothing wrong with fearing rejection, especially romantically, because it's very difficult. But there is something wrong with not being willing to try. You have to try, at least genuinely, to be romantic for your genuine self, right? You're gonna fail. You're gonna stumble and fall and fail, but it's really important to learn from your failures and to not treat other people as badly as you treat yourself. Even if you feel you're not worth it, that's your problem. That's not other people's problems. And then you have, I think, a separate issue is that because women so much of the time are often traumatized by the worst of the worst men have to offer, because again, if you think about selection bias, the main people that women are going to run into that are horrible are also the people most likely to approach women. When I think genuinely just awkward, quiet, introverted, asocial men, or I should say non-sociable men, try to put themselves out, women are already so jaded that they react, I think, much more harshly because they fear what has already happened to them. And this makes it seem to dudes who don't interact with women much that they don't have a chance, which I think, again, puts them on the cycle of, well, if I don't have a chance with women, what is the thing that I'm supposed to do because I want to have a chance? And again, it's not like, I think in any meaningful way, how do I introspect? A lot of young dudes are influenced by the successful people that they see. And so this is how you get people, I think, going down the rabbit holes of like, you know, like Andrew frickin' Tate, or any of the other grifters like Jordan Peterson and stuff, because they're looking for people to put them on the right path because they feel, in a lot of cases, that they lack the ability, the emotional maturity, the social graces to be able to do it themselves. And it sucks. And if any of you are sticking around, because this video is already entirely too long, I would very much say that if you want advice on how to get out of your loneliness, because again, I do think it's a pervasive issue among young men. If you want to get out of your loneliness, I think one of the things that you're going to have to do is become comfortable with discomfort. It is, I think, a freaking Hallmark card way of thinking. But the only way we ever improve as individuals is if we continuously expand our zone of comfort. But to do that, you have to be explorative and do things that you don't know if you're going to be comfortable with. You have to be okay with failure. And all this means, from an emotional perspective, telling people stuff that you really don't want. Being honest about yourself, being honest with yourself. It means opening up to your guy friends, because this is the first thing. None of you guys, if you identify with like the issue here, don't do this with women first. You need to view women as people and not sex objects first, and try to just be friends with women. But the main thing dudes need to do is open up to each other more, be more vulnerable more, because it is not up to women to fix the male loneliness epidemic, right? Women are contributors, right? And how women respond to men who are trying to better themselves is a big thing. But the main thing that we need to do is have a community amongst ourselves, right? We need to foster and model for younger men and other men around us how to actually be vulnerable, how to talk about our emotions, you know, how to not just have surface level conversations, how to disagree, how to remain friends while disagreeing, right? Or how to end friendships over disagreements, because not everyone is going to be your friend, right? These are, unfortunately, like really basic baseline elements of sociability that we should be taught from a young age, but we're not. Because again, for so long, so much about being a dude was maintaining a strong outward appearance so that you could continue to provide for those people around you, right? It is shrugging off the harshness of life so that you can continue bringing resources in, so that you can continue being a role model, always strong, always persevering for others. And luckily, we just don't have to do that anymore. We could talk about our emotions, because there have been like literally hundreds of years of the joke of like the miserable father in like a loveless marriage who doesn't really like his kids that much, unless the son turns out to be like him and he can live vicariously through him. I cannot count how many times I've just seen that in fiction. But this is all to say, I have spent way too much time talking about this, but I thought it was important at least to be able to address, because even here, I have touched the surface, like the tip of the iceberg, when it comes to like the sociological ways to think about this, because I think there are vast quantities of info, both psychologically, sociologically, and psychosexually, that contribute to where we are now. But the main issue isn't men just choosing to be losers, or men having like an innate lack of morality when it comes to femininity or interacting with romance or even each other. It's the fact that there is not a consistent community of openness and genuineness amongst men that is healthy for us to be able to give out our emotions to others and receive emotions for others. We, I think, unfortunately, are down a path where we are starting to blame a lot of other things for our problems, you know, whether it be Hollywood, wokeness, femininity, whatever it is. And yes, is it important to be able to talk the things that make us, you know, angry or uncomfortable? Sure. But these aren't the actual issues, right? It's the fact that, again, I think for so long, we haven't been actually taught how to communicate well. And it starts little by little, tiny little things. If you haven't cried in a while, dudes, that's something to introspect about. If you haven't been truly comfortable and happy doing what you want to do without other people's input, that's something to introspect about. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about these things because I thought, again, I could give a tiny little bit of info on it. So thanks for sitting all the way through it. If you like what you heard, like and subscribe, leave comments down below. And I can talk about anything else you guys want. So thanks for sitting around.